The Tolkien Road, Episode 29, The Lord of the Rings, Book 1, Chapter 7, In the House of Tom Bombadil.
Alright, go ahead. The Tolkien Road, 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 The Tolkien Road.
The Tolkien Road.
The Tolkien Road.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Tolkien Road. On this episode, we continue our discussion of The Lord of the Rings with Book 1, Chapter 7 of Fellowship, in the House of Tom Bombadil. As the title of this chapter would suggest, our discussion on this episode consists mainly in attempting to answer the question, who is Tom Bombadil? We consider both the evidence contained in this chapter, as well as the things Tolkien had to say about Bombadil in his letters. It's an easy question to get lost in, and we have a lot of fun exploring it. By the way, if you haven't already, please leave the Tolkien Road a rating and feedback on iTunes. We'd love to know what you think of the podcast. Enjoy the show! Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of the Tolkien Road. This is John. How y'all doing? Greta, how are you?
I'm awesome. How are you, John?
Doing well.
Terrific.
Doing well, can't complain.
Good.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about Tom Bombadil tonight.
Tom Bombadil.
Yeah, the mysterious, controversial, and seemingly wise Tom Bombadil. And quite poetic Tom Bombadil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Quite, poetic's a good word to describe him, I think.
Yeah, he's an interesting guy.
He's weird.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's a big question mark.
He's weird. Yeah, so we're going to talk tonight about Chapter 7 of Book 1 of The Lord of the Rings.
Yep.
In the House of Tom Bombadil.
In the house.
Yeah.
House party!
In the house!
Mm-hmm.
All right, but as always, we need to start off with some haiku.
Yes.
So let's do that, and let's do some hark. What is that, I hear us?
Oh my. It's my new favorite song.
Yeah.
From whence has that come?
It's the song taking the nation by storm.
You know it.
All of the kids are lining up at the record shop to buy this single.
Little do they know it's not available yet.
It is if you listen to the Tolkien Road.
Right. But you can't own it. Haiku time!
All right. Good.
Yeah.
Well done.
Was that good?
Sure.
I even forgot to practice, but I felt like that was pretty good.
This is just a spontaneous haiku time.
It was a spontaneous.
Alrighty. Let's do some haiku. So did you want to go first, or?
Yeah, mine's really rotten this week. I was not inspired at all.
No?
Nope.
It seems like this would be a chapter to inspire poetry.
Well, yeah, if you're a poet, maybe.
No.
I'm not really a poet. And plus, I was really tired when I was reading. So mine's not good, so I'll go first.
Okay.
Here's mine.
You go first, then.
I will. I'm going to go first. No, wait. Yeah, that's right. I'll go first. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
A blessed reprieve gladdens hobbit hearts, but Tom remains a puzzle.
Nice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could do better, but I didn't feel like it.
Yeah, well.
Like I said, it's not inspired.
Could do better, huh?
Not feeling it, yo.
I could totally do better, but I really lowballed this one. Just mailed it in.
Yeah.
Way to mail it in, Greta. Man.
You know, can't win them all.
Just emailed the boss on that one. Let him know you wouldn't be at work today, huh?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
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 Hey, you know.
Yeah, just not feeling real great, you know. The old that's the old thing there.
Is that
what
what
it
it
was
is?
fine. That was a good haiku.
It is okay. I guess
Yeah.
it sounds a little bit like a 17-syllable sentence, but
Yeah.
you know, it is what it is, and it's over. So now it's your turn.
You just no more dwelling on that.
No.
Huh? Okay.
I really don't.
All right.
Want
All right.
So I know yours is gonna be awesome.
I don't know. I mean,
Well,
now
I suspect that it will be.
now I have to back down from that because I don't think it's going to be. You can't say stuff like that starting out, right?
Why?
You should just say the haiku.
Okay. With no
The haiku
no build
is
up.
a poem. You need to respect the poem. Greta.
Respect the poem. Maybe
You
that's
just
my
respect-
problem.
You need to respect the poetic moment, the haiku moment. Right?
RESPECT.
And not have it be this thing where you say, like, oh, my haiku's no good this week because I was too tired to write a good one. Or, like, your haiku's probably awesome, John. A haiku is like Tom Bombadil. It is.
It is what it is. What it is. And I don't want to talk about this anymore. So moving on.
Can I read my haiku now?
I've been trying to tell you. Yes.
Can I have my haiku moment?
Please do.
Thank you.
A moment like this.
No.
Oh.
Well, now we gotta just wait a few seconds for everything for the air to clear from that.
Whatever. That was awesome. Channeling my inner Kelly Clarkson.
In what universe is that awesome?
This one that I'm living in. Where bad haikus
the
are
Gretaverse?
king.
All right.
Alright. You need to read your haiku now.
Okay. Just waiting for the moment.
I
All right.
stopped myself. I was about to sing again.
Stop.
But I stopped myself. I did.
Don't just quiet. Respect the haiku moment.
RESPECT. I'm doing it right now. Do it.
You can't command haiku.
Oh, gosh. Haiku's getting on my nerves. Just read it already.
Untouched by desire for possession, unmastered by the ring, Tom is.
That's good. That's really good.
Crickets seem to think so.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I do too. That is good.
Yeah.
Tom is. Is.
Yeah. Well, I didn't say that. Tom did.
I know he did. That's
Or
really good.
Goldberry did, or maybe Tolkien.
Yeah,
did.
I found that section of the chapter. I'm assuming we'll talk about it.
Yes.
But that part of the story, I found very intriguing.
Yeah.
The part of the chapter,
Yeah.
where the Tom and the ring interaction, I thought was very interesting.
Cool.
Yeah, that was a good poem. I liked it.
All right. Well, we had some submissions from two of our super fans this week.
Woohoo! Only two of them.
Yeah. We didn't get anything from Trevor this week, so
I bet those short form ballads are pretty time consuming.
yeah. Well, and I bet they really take it out of you. You know?
I'm sure they do.
Yeah. So
Probably needs a couple weeks to recover and
yeah. Hope we get
get
another.
inspired.
I'd love another short form ballad from
I'd
him.
love
That was
it.
awesome.
Maybe he just didn't feel inspired like me.
Well, he's probably a busy guy. You
He
know,
probably
computational linguistics is
Yeah.
sounds complicated.
Sounds very complicated.
So
Yeah, he probably has played a little too full this week.
yeah.
Send us one next week, please, Trevor.
Yeah, we'd love to hear from you again.
Yes.
And others out there too. Please join the Haiku Association of the Tolkien Road. So
Yes.
Josh, he gave me two. He didn't specify which one. I don't think he did, at least. So I'm going to read one. I'm going to read the one that I think is that I want to read on air. I'm not going to say it's the better of the two because I got to respect the haiku.
Right.
I'm just going to say that I'm going to read this one because I think this is the one to read on the air.
All right. You're just feeling it.
Quit judging me.
I'm not judging anything. Except my own haiku.
Yeah.
Which was really bad. Go on.
Respect the haiku moment.
We're going to lose listeners if we keep...
Before the
silence.
unknown world, birthed strangely like Ungoliant, Tom saw it all.
Did he just compare Tom to Ungoliant?
He
What?
did
the
what he did.
What?
What do you think?
Wow.
Yeah, you know, I read that one and I think he's trying to say that Ungoliant is, or Tom, you know, like Ungoliant's like a mysterious origin. We don't know exactly where she came from, right? We think she was a Maiar that was, you know, corrupted by
yeah.
Sauron, but we're not entirely sure.
Mm-hmm.
And Tom's kind of like that too, right? We don't know exactly where
That's
he came
true.
from. He seems to have been around a long time
Yep.
before the known world. So I think that's a pretty good one, actually.
That is really
and it gives you that you know, you harken back to well, what was I going to say? I lost my train of thought. Anyway,
Welcome back to what?
I don't know. I lost my train. It'll probably come to me in the middle of this episode.
Okay.
So I had a very profound thought though, and I just lost it.
Must have been super profound.
Yeah, it was. It was maybe too profound for me to actually speak it.
Yeah, you couldn't find the right words.
Yeah, or it was just like it was a thought. It was just like, I'm too profound for you, and I'm gonna go away from you now. So too profound to emerge from your lips.
So it was judging you,
Bubba.
Your profound thought judged you and found you unworthy.
That's what I think.
Okay, well.
Yeah. All right, and then Mary Grace submitted 3. And of course, all of the, Josh and Mary Grace, the ones you didn't read, will go on the site, as well as one of mine. And did you have any extra, or just the one?
Sorry, I couldn't. Just wasn't feeling it.
That's disappointing.
Can I go? Maybe after our discussion, I'll be inspired to write another one.
Maybe. I hope so.
Yep.
If you are, then yes, you can submit them.
Oh, I can. I can submit them post podcast.
Yes.
Okay, that's good to know.
As long as they're about this chapter.
Right.
Yeah.
We're right. Got it.
All right. So Mary Grace submitted 3, and she actually picked one that she wanted me to read on air. So
okay.
Here goes. Ancient is Tom, yes. He was there before the kings. He knows the stars well.
Oh.
Very nice.
I like that a lot.
Very nice.
That has that nice haiku rhythm.
Mm-hmm.
That was very good. Well done, Mary Grace.
Yes.
And Josh.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really good.
Yeah, what I liked about... let me see if I can capture that fleeting thought. What I liked about Josh's was... what I was trying to say about Josh's when we read it was that it's it's an interesting comparison because Tom is a very benevolent figure, and Ungoliant is obviously a very malicious figure,
right?
But neither of them appear to have any solid allegiance to either good or evil, right? Like they just kind of are. And Ungoliant may be evil, but she doesn't work for the Dark Lord, right?
I see what you're saying.
He has to, if you go back to that chapter in the Silmarillion, he basically has to make a deal with her. Right. It's not like she reports to him and is like, whatever you say, sir.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, that's true.
So, and it's also interesting because it's kind of it's just kind of the flip side to Tom, right?
Right. It's the one extreme and the other.
Yeah.
Right. One extreme. Yeah.
So it captures that, it's just, I think that's a really good one. I like that comparison a lot. I wasn't sure about it at first, but I liked it a lot the more I think about it.
Yeah.
So, nicely done.
It is. It's good. It's good stuff, guys.
All right.
Keep it coming.
Yes, keep them coming. Hey, Greta, by the way, have you read Tolkien's Requiem yet?
I sure haven't. I'm really sorry. I know I said I'd read it when I finish Anna Karenina, and I didn't.
Yeah.
I got distracted.
It's not very long,
That's what you keep telling me, but I really don't. I really wish you would come out with a actual book version of it, because I really prefer reading books that are.
I hope to do that at some point. Yeah.
My Kindle. I just don't. I don't enjoy reading things on my Kindle.
Yeah.
But I'll do it. I'll get to it.
Well, dang, it's going to be a chore.
No, I want to read it. I do. There's, so many good books out there in so little time.
Well, maybe it's good that you don't read it until you read Baron and Luthien first.
That's kind of what I was thinking, too.
Yeah, sure it was.
I kind of want to know the background.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. That's exactly what I was thinking, John. You
darn,
totally fell for
obvious?
that. You totally fell for that setup right there.
Oh, drat.
Drat indeed. Hey, by the way, before we jump into the so two items of business before we jump into the chapter discussion on the chapter.
Quick.
Don't hurry me.
I will hurry you.
Number one.
I want to.
Some new articles up since the last mention at truemist.org. Continuing writing on my thoughts on a Silmarillion film and how that could possibly be done. I think there's been 2 since the last one I mentioned, and so they're both about the second one in the series is about how you would go about what's the best way of doing it. Does it have to be a film, or could you do a TV series, or
a miniseries,
or would like a graphic novel presentation like what Evan Palmer did? Would that be the best thing? What are
the medium?
It's basically looking at different mediums and saying what's the best way of doing it. Right. And then this third one I just did is kind of a first stab at saying how you might go about doing it as a film. All right, I personally think it'd be better as a TV series, and I'll go into that in a later entry in this blog series.
Sounds cool.
But I did this one on the film series, and then the next one, that's going to be coming out in about 2 weeks, will be about how I'd actually break out the different films, how I'd actually break it into films and do that.
You mean break it into the TV series?
No, you can't just do just one Silmarillion film, right?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah. So how it actually like
what would be in what season, basically?
No, films.
Oh, I thought you were talking about TV series.
That'll be down the road, further down the road.
Oh, so now
right?
I see. Like
I'm having to spend a little time talking about how you do it as a film.
Oh, okay. So
right?
like you're talking about how they did the Lord of the Ring movies, or how they did The Hobbit in 2 parts and stuff like that, or 3 parts. I forget. Anyway.
Yeah.
I see what you're saying.
But so that's one of the things I talk about is that The Hobbit was probably overdone by doing it 3 films. The Silmarillion, even though it's only 1 book, it's so many different stories that you'd have to break it into multiple films.
Right. Yeah.
And I actually say, you know how many films I say it would take, I think, to do
9.
it right? You already knew that?
No, I said 9. I just guessed.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, for real?
That's what I said, yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah,
that's
3 trilogies is basically what I said.
That's just the first number that popped in my head.
Yeah.
Wow, it's a sign.
Maybe.
There's supposed to be 9 Silmarillion
Maybe it'll happen.
films made at some point.
And that might sound like a lot to people, but go over and check it out and, argue with me if you want to. And, let me know what you think.
Cool beans.
So
That sounds like a good read, Joe.
Right on.
Yeah.
And then I also did one a little while ago about, maybe this was a week and a half ago now, about Tolkien's faith. And I'm going to be doing a long series on Tolkien's faith. There'll probably be many different entries on this one. But just really exploring that whole aspect of him in depth and seeing how it relates to his creativity on different levels, because there's just a ton to say there.
Yeah.
You kind of skim through his letters and that kind of thing, and you really get a sense that he wasn't this guy who like had his religion on the side and wrote books for a living. Like he was, it deeply informed everything he did, and just his totally informed his way of life. So I think he's a fascinating guy to explore his faith in that way.
Yeah.
Especially because it's not the first thing you think of with him, but it's so deep rooted in him,
Yeah.
He was a very fervent and devout believer.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds great.
Yeah. So anyway, go check those out over at truemist.org. The other thing I wanted to tell you, this was short. I think you were right about the location of Tom's house. So I think it is actually on the edge of the old forest, transitioning into the downs, I think.
Yeah, that sounds right.
And I actually went and looked it up in Karen Fonstad's book, The Atlas of Middle-earth. And, or maybe it's The Maps of Middle... Anyway, it's an incredible book that this cartographer, Karen Fonstad, who has unfortunately now passed away, did... Probably, I think back in the 80s, and it's still the gold standard for like that stuff. And she just put such meticulous work into like making sure she got all the details right on these maps. The only bad thing is that it's not in color. I wish it was in color. It's kind of in this weird sort of, I forget what they call it, but it's like 2 or 3 different colors. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
so I wish it was full color, but it's a really cool book. And I looked in that, and she seems to think that Tom's house is on the edge, and I didn't actually go back and look it up in the chapter to see if that's what it said, but she seems to think it's clear that Tom's house is on the edge of the old forest.
Well, I'll take it. Thank you.
Yeah, so apparently entering Tom's house was escaping from the old forest.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. I never thought I'd be right when it came to something regarding geography. So that's kind of a...
There you go. Your high school geography teacher would be proud, I'm sure.
Enough for my bad haiku tonight, I think.
Oh, good job.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm back to square one now.
Back to square one?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, did you have a favorite passage?
I did.
Yeah?
I did. It's toward the end. I don't know why most of my favorite passages come toward the end. But this is when they're in Tom Bombadil's house, and they'd been sitting around talking for a little while because it had been a rainy day. And finally the rain has ended. And this is where my favorite passage begins. "And let us have food and drink," cried Tom. "Long tales are thirsty, and long listenings hungry work, morning, noon, and evening. With that, he jumped out of his chair and with a bound took a candle from the chimney shelf and lit it in the flame that Goldberry held. Then he danced about the table. Suddenly, he hopped through the door and disappeared.
Nice.
That was my favorite.
What did you like about that one?
Well, it made me chuckle, first
Yeah.
of all. Because I felt like I could just see, like I could just picture in my head, like just his every movement. And at first, when I read it, I thought it said he was dancing on the table. And that really made me laugh. But then I realized I was like, oh, that's okay. He's still dancing, like, for no reason. And I think that's funny. And I felt like it just really did a good job of just kind of encapsulating just his character.
Yeah.
Like, just in those, just those little movements, that he did and the way he's described there. I just felt like I got a really good picture of him and his character.
Yeah.
So.
Cool.
That was my favorite. How about you?
Very nice. So I picked one that's a little bit longer, but here it is. Tom then told them many remarkable stories, sometimes half as if speaking to himself, sometimes looking at them suddenly with a bright blue eye under his deep brows. Often his voice would turn to song, and he would get out of his chair and dance about. He told them tales of bees and flowers, the ways of trees, and the strange creatures of the forest, about the evil things and good things, things friendly and things unfriendly, cruel things and kind things, and secrets hidden under brambles. As they listened, they began to understand the lives of the forest, apart from themselves, indeed to feel themselves as the strangers where all other things were at home. Moving constantly in and out of his talk was Old Man Willow, and Frodo learned now enough to content him, indeed more than enough, for it was not comfortable lore. Tom's words laid bare the hearts of trees and their thoughts, which were often dark and strange, and filled with a hatred of things that go free upon the earth, gnawing, biting, breaking, hacking, burning, destroyers and usurpers. It was not called the Old Forest without reason, for it was indeed ancient, a survivor of vast forgotten woods. And in it there lived yet, aging no quicker than the hills, the fathers of trees, remembering times when they were lords. The countless years had filled them with pride and rude wisdom and with malice, but none were more dangerous than the great willow. His heart was rotten, but his strength was green, and he was cunning and a master of winds, and his song and thought ran through the woods on both sides of the river. His grey, thirsty spirit drew power out of the earth and spread like fine root threads in the ground, and invisible twig fingers in the air, till it had under its dominion nearly all the trees of the forest from the hedge to the downs. So, anyway, I just like that. I like the description of Tom, kind of how animated he is as he's telling him all these stories and how much he knows. But I also like just what he says about laying bare the hearts of trees and their thoughts, which were often dark and strange. One of the things I love about Tolkien's work is the way he, there's the depth of mystery he puts into everything, and he sees a story behind everything. And I think if he really could have, he would have spent time, and he often did this. He would have spent time like just telling every single story, like what were those, like he would have gone exploring in what those thoughts were,
Right.
With the trees and like and that sort of thing. Right. So, I just thought that was a fascinating account, and how the trees view people like us, right? Filled with the hatred of things that go free upon the earth, gnawing, biting, breaking, hacking, burning, destroyers and usurpers. I just think that's, sometimes it's interesting to put yourself into different shoes than the ones you normally have, and literature can help you do that. But I think that's a really good way of kind of looking at the world around us and seeking maybe to live more in harmony with it. I'm not saying that never cut down a tree or something like that. I'm just saying, like, so often we look at these other things and think of them just simply as inanimate objects rather than as other beings. Right. Things that, while they don't, trees don't have the rational kind of thought processes that we do. They're still living organisms, right? And what do they have thought in their own way, right? I don't know. right? It's not like our thought, but is it possible that they have their own way of being, that's utterly mysterious to us? So anyway, just a lot there.
Yeah, that's true. It is very thought-provoking. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Takes you out of your shoes, shows you how other things look at you.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. You feel me? You feel me?
I got it.
All right. So, when it comes down to this chapter, for me, it's, the big question, there are two big questions. I think one of them gets focused on far more than the other. But there are really two big questions. And the first one is, who is Tom Bombadil? Mm-hmm. And then the second one is, who is Goldberry? Right?
Yes.
I think Tom Bombadil is so mysterious and stands in the foreground so much that we can sometimes just focus all the attention on him. But it's also, I think, important to ask who Goldberry is.
I agree, yeah.
It's not 100% clear, at all. It's probably she's probably even more mysterious, in fact, than Tom. Because Tolkien got asked so much about Tom during his life, and he wrote a lot about
did he?
Who Tom was in his letters.
Oh, cool.
He didn't write nearly as much about Goldberry.
Okay.
And what the deal with her was.
Okay.
But it's almost like I don't know about you, but I don't get the impression that Goldberry is the same of a similar species with Tom necessarily.
No, I don't think she is. I think she's something different.
Yeah.
But I don't know what.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the chapter.
Okay.
So there's a couple of different things I do want to read from his letters as we get to different parts, but I thought this was really interesting. Immediately after, or in 1937, which was just after he had finished The Hobbit and maybe was just starting to think about the new Hobbit, right, which would eventually become The Lord of the Rings, he wrote and asked about, I think he was speculating on whether Tom Bombadil would make a good story in and of itself as a next story. And he says he's writing.
Wait! Is Tom Bombadil in The Hobbit?
No, but Tolkien had been Stanley Unwin, who was his publisher, had written him. They were talking about, okay, what next, right? What do you want to publish next? And I think he had shared a lot of his different stuff with Mr. Unwin.
Okay.
And so he said, do you think Tom Bombadil could be made into the hero of a story? I think he had already shared, because
I see.
Tom Bombadil was this character that had been floating around in Tolkien's mind for a long time, right?
I see, okay.
And he even wrote a poem about him before The Lord of the Rings came out, which I haven't read, which I need to, and then he wrote one later after The Lord of the Rings came out. I think it was the name of one of like a stuffed animal or something like that for one of his kids.
Tom Bombadil was? Oh, okay.
And I think that's where the name came from. But he actually says, do you think Tom Bombadil, the spirit of the vanishing Oxford and Berkshire countryside, could be made into the hero of a story?
So he calls him a spirit.
Yeah, he says the spirit of the vanishing Oxford and Berkshire countryside. So I don't necessarily take that as like a literal spirit in terms of like he's some kind of ghost or something like that.
Right, yeah.
I think take that more as like the essence or the being, right, or or just in the spirit of something, right?
Yes.
Now Tolkien had a way of turning things like that, ideas like that, into spirit beings, you know?
Yeah.
But here I think he's just saying, but he compares him, he basically says that Tom is this encompassment of vanishing countryside, right? And specifically of a specific vanishing countryside, but that, just this idea that, and this is something we see it all around us, as the countryside gets smaller and smaller as urban areas expand and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, let's start into the chapter. So,
okay.
I don't know, what's the first big thing you took note of in the chapter?
Well, Goldberry really opens it up.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, she's there right at the beginning. Basically, they're, when the hobbits kind of walk up to the house, she's there to greet them. I found her to be I was very perplexed by her. Mm-hmm. I was like, is she real? Is she an elf? Is she I just didn't know. And she's called herself the daughter of the river.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how can rivers have daughters?
Yeah.
You know? So that was really the first thing that kind of, that I found interesting. And I love what she said to them when she invites them in, and she says, come, dear folk, laugh and be merry. I am Goldberry, daughter of the river. Let us shut out the night. For you are still afraid, perhaps, of mist and tree shadows and deep water and untamed things. Fear nothing, for tonight you are under the roof of Tom Bombadil.
Yeah.
I was like, I want to go there. Like,
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
Yeah, there's lots of places like that in Lord of the Rings.
Yes, yeah, there are, for sure.
Yeah.
That's really the first thing that kind of jumped out at me. I'm like, okay, the hobbits are in a good place. They're in a safe place. We're not quite sure who their hosts and hostess are, but we know they're safe.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and we know that that's got to be a real blessing for them after everything that they've been through so far.
Right.
In their journey.
Yeah. I like how Frodo is inspired, just like.
He starts singing.
Almost like divine inspiration.
Yeah.
You know, "O slender as a willow wand, O clearer than clear water, O reed by the living pool, fair river daughter, O springtime and summertime and spring again after, O wind on the waterfall and the leaves' laughter."
Yeah. So he didn't even really know what he was doing, did he?
No.
He was just like,
Yeah. So it's interesting. I don't know what to make of Goldberry either. I mean, yeah, the closest we can come is river daughter. I don't know if that means she's literally the daughter of the river, or if she's just given that name by Tom a long time ago because maybe he found her by the river, or or what it is. I think Tolkien says something about that she embodies the seasons or the changing seasons in elsewhere. I think I read that somewhere, maybe in one of his letters. But I think she's in a way even more mysterious than Tom.
I totally agree. Well, you don't learn learn anything about her.
Yeah.
She almost seems a little bit like a maid, or like a some kind of household helper, because she's the one that he talks about her doing the washing, right, and setting the table and preparing meals, and so she almost seems like a domestic help of some sort, but she also at the same time seems too glamorous to just be that.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, we do know that she apparently has the resemblance of an elf, of an elf woman. It says, "A fair young elf queen, clad in living flowers." I mean, she just seems totally in harmony with Tom and with everything.
Right.
With everything else. She's also a singer.
Yep.
But I don't know.
I don't know either.
I don't know. Maybe it'll become a little clearer as we go through. All right. Well, just after that, Frodo asks her, "Who is Tom Bombadil?" Right.
Yeah.
And her answer is simply, "He is."
Yeah.
And Frodo's just stumped, so she says, "He is as you have seen him. He is the master of wood, water, and hill." And then Frodo asks the logical follow-on question for most people, which is, then all this strange land belongs to him? And she just no, like this, and it says her smile faded. It's almost as if that's she's horrified by that thought, Yeah. That Tom would actually own these things, and she says that that would indeed be a burden, and she added in a low voice as if that would indeed be a burden, right? The trees and the grasses and all things growing or living in the land belong each to themselves. Tom Bombadil is the master. No one has ever caught old Tom walking in the forest, wading in the water, leaping on the hilltops under light and shadow. He has no fear. Tom Bombadil is master. I don't know, what do you do with that? How can he be both master but not be the owner?
That's what I was just wondering. I don't know. Because it seems like they're one and the same. Unless a master, in the way they mean master, almost more of a caretaker.
Yeah.
You know, he's the one that kind of watches over and, you know, does the maintenance, or, you know, corrects Old Man Willow when he gets out of line. You know, I mean, maybe he is just kind of a, you know, someone who just kind of keeps everything in line. Mm-hmm. You know, somebody that, you know, when you think about, you know, those big mansions, or, you know, Downton Abbey or something like that. I mean, they had the people that owned the house. You know, they had the Lord Grantham who owned it, but then they had plenty of caretakers because it was such a large. Mm-hmm. But even you can call a caretaker a master, though. So I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I look at this like, and I think. So I look at this like, you can be like, a master is, like, when we hear master, a lot of times we think of master in terms of being an owner or being in charge or something like that, right?
Right. Yeah.
That it's ultimately someone you got to bow down to and report to and all this kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. But a master is also someone who maybe has mastered themselves, right? Is not mastered by other things, right? Yep. Or you know, has just maybe fulfilled what they're intended to be, right? Kind
of reached their full potential.
Yeah. You know, it's almost like a more Eastern thought of, like, you know, who is the you know, the master in like a martial arts, you know, movie or something like that. You know, he's like this guru, right?
Yeah.
He's not a, you know, this master who, like, everybody reports to and fears and, you know, doesn't want to cross. He's more like this person who someone trying to learn something would learn from, you know, because they're so free, right?
Yeah.
And that, to me, is what I'm getting. That's sort of the vibe I'm getting from this, right?
Like a Mr. Miyagi kind of thing?
Well, I just use the Eastern thing as like kind of a reference, but not like. I mean, you could probably make in some sense a comparison with Mr. Miyagi, but I think it's more just about, like, being completely free, being totally fulfilled in your nature, and having no need for possession of things, right?
Just being completely content and happy with who you are.
It's like Tom's power over everything comes because he doesn't hang on to the power, right?
Right.
He's so free. He's so free of it all. Like, what she says is that would be a burden, right?
Yeah.
And and that's true. Like, when we have this view of the things that we own as being ours, you know, we do that because we want to hang on to them, but then they become a burden at the same time.
That's true. Yeah.
And that way, in becoming a burden, they become a nuisance, a menace to our peace and to our ability to be happy sometimes, right? Yeah. But when we're able to let go of them and just let them be as they are, then we, in some sense, become even more powerful. It's this weird sort of power that comes of being truly free of something, you know?
Yeah. No, I get it. I totally get it.
I don't know.
Isn't that Dave Ramsey's whole thing? Right? Like, when you're free of debt, that you just it's just like this amazing.
Yeah, for those who don't know, Dave Ramsey is this financial guy who is all about being debt free, and but yeah, I mean, that's kind of the idea, right? I mean, that goes with anything, right? I mean, I think that's that's why it's so interesting what happens later with the ring, right? Because it has no influence over him.
Yeah, he has no desire for it whatsoever. It can't exert the same power over him that it does to others. But that is kind of an ironic, you know, it seems kind of backwards, right? To find power in having nothing, right? To find freedom in being just completely possessionless, you know? I mean, it does. Or to find contentedness in nothingness. It seems a little...
well, and it's almost, you know, as I think about it... I'm sorry, are we going to...
No, I was going to say, it seems kind of backwards. You know, kind of ironic.
You know, it's funny, as I think about it, I mean, so core to Tom's nature seems to be music, and we talked a little bit about that last week, and how what he actually says to Old Man Willow
Yeah.
is how he's going to sing his roots off or something like that, right?
Yeah.
It was this really funny thing that he said.
Yeah.
But his power almost seems to be in music, right? And I get this sense, the more I think about it, that it's almost like as he is around, because there's so much music within him, things like natural things seek to be in harmony with him, right? And it's like if they're out of harmony with him, then they suffer because of it, right? So it's almost like this reverse. Instead of like clamping down sort of power, it's like Tom is like the leader of the band, and if they're not in tune with the leader of the band, then they're playing out of tune. It's just fascinating to me as I because we made the connection with the Ainur and the music of the Ainur last week, and how that's at the background of everything in Tolkien. And so it's like Tom is one facet of that, maybe, and so in this particular part of the world, things need to be in harmony with Tom, or they suffer because of it, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm speculating here, but I mean, again, music seems so bound up in him.
It does, yeah. It does.
All right, let's pause real quick. I think we've reached a good stopping point, and we'll come back and continue our discussion of all things Tom Bombadil. Don't go away.
Stay tuned.
Do you know the tale that Tolkien called the kernel of the Middle-earth mythology? Beren and Luthien is the story of an outlaw mortal and an elvish princess tasked with obtaining a Silmaril, one of the holy jewels of the Blessed Realm, from the Iron Crown of the Dark Lord Morgoth. In my new book, Tolkien's Requiem, I explore the legend of these doomed lovers. In doing so, I aim to provide a backdoor into the world of the Silmarillion for those who have struggled to give it a go. One of Tolkien's greatest achievements, the story of Beren and Luthien, deserves to be as well known as The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. Get your copy of Tolkien's Requiem today by visiting truemyths.org/Beren. That's truemyths.org/BEREN. Happy reading! All right, we're back. Let's continue our discussion of Tom Bombadil.
Yeah, let's do it.
So we talked about that Frodo's question to Goldberry of who Tom is, and she simply says he is. He is as you have seen him. He is the master of wood, water, and hill. And there's this little paradox there of he's the master, but he's not like he's in control, right? It's not like he owns it, right?
Yeah.
And then later they ask, so jumping ahead towards the end of the chapter, they ask him directly, "Who are you? Who are you, master?" And he says, "Hey," like he's this old man, like falling asleep. What? Don't you know my name yet? That's the only answer. Tell me, who are you? Alone, yourself, and nameless. But you are young and I am old. Eldest, that's what I am. Mark my words, my friends. Tom was here before the river and the trees. Tom remembers the first raindrop and the first acorn. He made paths before the big people and saw the little people arriving. He was here before the kings and the graves and the Barrowites. When the elves passed westward, Tom was here already, before the seas were bent. He knew the dark under the stars when it was fearless, before the Dark Lord came from the outside. So how old does that make Tom?
Really old.
Like how old? What do you think?
Like a couple thousand years.
Well, no, we know, so we've already read about when the elves passed westward, right?
Yeah, I just don't remember when that was exactly.
Well, that was when we were reading the Silmarillion.
Well, I know,
right?
but I don't remember like years and.
Oh well, it was. Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to like quiz you on the number of years.
Like first age, second age, third age. Is that?
I'm just talking about. Do you remember when that happened? Yeah. And do you understand like what he's referencing here?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do. I just don't remember exactly when in time it occurred.
Yeah. Well, yeah. He's kind of progressing backwards. He's saying, "I was here before the elves passed westward, before the seas were bent." Right. I knew the dark under the stars when it was fearless, before the Dark Lord came from the outside. So it's like he's really, really, really old. He goes back like even further than it would seem like the Ainur themselves came into the world, right?
Yeah, that yes, okay.
It's almost like he was this being who was here before they even showed up, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know, to read all of that is fascinating to me, and so I marked off some different things in Tolkien's letters about Tom. We already read one thing about him being the spirit of the vanishing countryside. And here's the thing, like, there's been lots of people who've tried to kind of advance different theories about who Tom really is.
Okay.
And, you know, the thing is, Tolkien didn't know, right? Tolkien actually calls him an intentional enigma, right?
Oh.
He says, there is, of course, a clash between literary technique and the fascination of elaborating in detail an imaginary mythical age. Mythical, not allegorical. My mind does not work allegorically. As a story, I think it is good that there should be a lot of things unexplained, especially if an explanation actually exists. And I have perhaps from this point of view erred in trying to explain too much and give too much past history. I'm going to skip a little bit. And even in a mythical age, there must be some enigmas, as there always are. Tom Bombadil is one, intentionally, right? So, and I don't think people, like, don't misunderstand what he's saying there. I don't think what he's saying is that he just put Tom Bombadil in there to mess people up.
Okay.
He has a reason for putting him in there.
Well, of course, yeah.
But, I mean, Tolkien did a lot like this. He wrote a lot like this where he just kind of felt like somebody should be there, or this character, there was a character that should be there, but he didn't know their whole story.
Okay.
You know, Galadriel is a very well-known figure and very popular amongst Tolkien fans, and we haven't gotten to her yet, but we did a little bit in the Silmarillion because she goes all the way back to the Silmarillion. But she's a character that he didn't figure out the whole story on in his lifetime. I mean, he was still working on her whole story up until the day he died, really.
Wow.
You know? Her character evolved vastly over the course of his lifetime as he tried more and more to understand what exactly her story was. And as he wrote, he often had this view of things that he was uncovering things that needed to be explored. That he wasn't writing like just being like making stuff up like on like kind of in the main part of his mind, like in the front part of his mind, if you will.
Right.
I don't know what the right word for that is, but it wasn't like he was just like, yeah, let's throw in a little elf queen here and that's good, and then let's throw in a weird dude right here who likes to sing and that'd be good.
Right.
It was just like these were things that came to him and he was like, Tom seems to belong here, you know?
Right. Yeah.
So it was a much more intuitive, mysterious process even for him as he went through.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. I think, again, I love that about Tolkien and how intuitive he was as he was creating these things.
Yeah.
Later on, maybe in the same letter, he actually says a little more about Tom. Is this the same? Yeah, it's the same letter. Tom Bombadil is not an important person to the narrative. I suppose he has some importance as a comment. I mean, I do not really write like that. He is just an invention, and he represents something that I feel important, though I would not be prepared to analyze the feeling precisely. I would not, however, have left him in if he did not have some kind of function. I might put it this way. The story is cast in terms of a good side and a bad side, beauty against ruthless ugliness, tyranny against kingship, moderated freedom with consent against compulsion that has long lost any object save mere power, and so on. But both sides, in some degree, conservative or destructive, want a measure of control. But if you have, as it were, taken a vow of poverty, renounce control, and take your delight in things for themselves without reference to yourself, watching, observing, and to some extent knowing, then the question of the rights and wrongs of power and control might become utterly meaningless to you, and the means of power quite valueless. It is a natural pacifist view, which always arises in the mind when there is a war. So he goes on a little bit, but I thought that was really interesting. He doesn't come right out and say it directly, but he basically implies that Tom has taken a vow of poverty, right?
Yeah.
And I think so often we can think of a vow of poverty and think like, well, that just means you're going to be really poor and live in squalor, right? But I think Tolkien really gets what a vow of poverty is, which is a renouncement of ownership, right? That you're not going to have this view of like, I got to own stuff because I don't want anybody else to own it, right?
Yeah.
I want to have the power over it, and if I don't own it, then other people will have the power over it. And Tom has apparently embraced this view of everything in the world that it's better not to own it. It's better to take this vow of poverty and be free of it, because you're free of that. You're free of the need to possess, right?
Yeah.
you're free to just be given everything as a gift in that way, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think of that?
No, I think it's beautiful. I think it's really beautiful, and I think it's very countercultural.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you feel like, especially in the society that we live in, people, you know, are, you know, the whole keeping up with the Joneses thing, and people, you know, so often people find their self-worth in how big is their house, and
right.
how nice a car do they own, and, you know, what school do my kids go to, and, you know, what is my position, and, you know, what is my job, and how much money do I make, and you think about all that, and it's really just, you know, it's just meaningless. It's all going to pass away, you know, and to think about, you know, with all those things comes so much work. You know, you got to clean that big house. You know, you got to take care of that expensive car, and repairs are not cheap on expensive cars. And
right,
you know, you just think about all that, and wouldn't it be nice just to not have to worry about any of that? You know, but people that, you know, I think that's, you know, I think that's something that, yeah, I can see where that would be really freeing to not own anything.
Right.
I mean, would it be scary? I think it would be a little bit scary.
Yeah.
But I mean, Tom doesn't seem to have any trouble putting food on the table. You know,
right.
He obviously has a comfortable house with room for guests and all of that. So there's a balance, you know, and I think that's...
Well, and I think what's interesting, too, about the rest of that is it's not that Tom isn't vulnerable. Like, Tom is not... Tolkien does... In everything that Tolkien writes, and we'll see this later on, it's not as if Tom is completely invulnerable to harm, right?
Okay.
He is. He's vulnerable. And actually, it says later on in this passage that I just read, ultimately only the victory of the West will allow Bombadil to continue or even to survive. Nothing would be left for him in the world of Sauron, right? So, you know, Tom is not completely, like, he's not this figure who's just like, he doesn't have to own anything because he can't be harmed, right?
Right.
But it's just like he's built this way of life that is totally in harmony with the things around him. If you did upset that balance, then you could harm him.
Yes.
But it's like he's surrendered himself to that possibility, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, I'd rather have life this way than be caught up in all this other stuff and be totally not at peace and miserable, you know?
Yeah, totally.
Anyway, I thought that vow of poverty was really, really interesting. You know, it is with ownership of things comes burden, and with you know, when you cease owning things and are just able to appreciate them for their beauty, you know, he says, take delight in things for themselves without reference to yourself, watching, observing, and to some extent knowing. You know, not this what's in it for me mentality, but like
right.
just that's beautiful or that's really cool, right?
Right. Appreciate it for what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to me, at root, like that's so Tolkienian, right? He's like, why does there need to be some overriding purpose to my story? Why does my story have to be useful to you, right?
Right.
To your political motives or whatever, right? That's not what my story is about. My story is about the story, right?
Yep.
And it may seem like something that you've gone through in your own life, or it may seem like something that's going on in society, but that doesn't mean that's what the story's about.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And trying to force meaning and trying to get me to say that I wrote it about something, you're trying to basically get ownership of it for your particular cause or whatever, right? Yep. And I think that's a problem that any artist potentially runs into, right? When when people want to use their art for some cause or something like that, right?
Yes.
I think art is too sacred. A good art is too sacred for that. It needs to stand on its own.
Yeah, I absolutely agree.
All right.
It's really insightful. Good stuff.
Yeah. Well, there's one other passage that's really good that I wanted to read from the letters. Again, because Tom is a really interesting figure, and we're not going to get to cover him much more. He does come back a little bit in the next chapter, but then it's pretty much no more Tom after that. So I want to cover him as much as we can when we have a chance.
For that, yeah.
So somebody somebody actually took issue with Tolkien saying that with the whole response that he is, or that Goldberry says that Tom Bombadil is, and the person was like, Tolkien, you're a Catholic. Don't you know that like it's God who is, right?
Yeah.
God is I am, right?
Right, yeah.
And so is Tom Bombadil God? Is that what he's supposed to be? And I think there's some people who have actually forwarded that notion before, but
it definitely popped into my mind.
Yeah, well, it did too. When I first read it, and probably on multiple reasons until I started digging into it and what Tolkien actually had to say, it makes sense. But what he said, so listen to everything he says here. Frodo has not asked what is Tom Bombadil, but who is he? We and he, no doubt, often laxly confuse the questions. Goldberry gives what I think is the correct answer. We need not go into the sublimities of I am that am, which is quite different from he is. She adds as a concession a statement of part of the what. He is master in a peculiar way. He has no fear and no desire of possession or domination at all. He merely knows and understands about such things as concern him in his natural little realm. He hardly even judges, and as far as can be seen, makes no effort to reform or remove even the willow. I don't think Tom needs philosophizing about, and is not improved by it, but many have found him an odd or indeed discordant ingredient. In historical fact, I put him in because I had already invented him independently. He first appeared in the Oxford magazine, and wanted an adventure on the way. But I kept him in, and as he was, because he represents certain things otherwise left out. Excuse me. I do not mean him to be an allegory, or I should not have given him so particular, individual, and ridiculous a name. But allegory is the only mode of exhibiting certain functions. He is then an allegory or an exemplar, a particular embodying of pure, real natural science, the spirit that desires knowledge of other things, their history and nature, because they are other and wholly independent of the inquiring mind, a spirit coeval with the rational mind, and entirely unconcerned with doing anything with the knowledge. Zoology and botany, not cattle breeding or agriculture. Even the elves hardly show this. They are primarily artists. Also, Tom Bombadil exhibits another point in his attitude to the ring, and its failure to affect him. You must concentrate on some part, probably relatively small, of the world, whether to tell a tale, however long, or to learn anything, however fundamental. And therefore much will from that point of view be left out, distorted on the circumference, or seen a discordant oddity. The power of the ring over all concerned, even the wizards or emissaries, is not of delusion. But it is not the whole picture, even of the then state and content of that part of the universe. So, what did you take away from that? Before I start pontificating on it, what did you take away from it? It's a lot, but what did you grab hold of?
Well, what I think is funny is, Tolkien makes it very clear there, like he did in the other passages, that he's in there because he wanted in there. You know, he had invented this cool character that he didn't want to go to waste, right? And,
right.
He thought it would be a nice place to put him in the story, and I think it's kind of funny actually, because I feel like Tolkien is saying, just appreciate him for who he is. Like you said, he doesn't even need philosophizing. You know, like just appreciate him. Like what we were just saying, just appreciate art. You know, don't have to like read all this stuff into it and try to figure it out and whatever. So I think we should just appreciate Tom for who he is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's funny. I read that and I'm like, but you had to know that people were going to philosophize about this guy. I mean, it's he's interesting, right? He's interesting to the like. There's some like sometimes you look at art and you're like, that's beautiful. You just need to behold, like it's just beautiful. Mm-hmm. Just behold it, right? Mm-hmm. But our minds, even when we're beautiful, when things are beautiful, our minds seem to want to study it in a way to appreciate it better, right? It's like what we're doing here, right? Yeah. We're studying this because we want it. We've read it before. We already appreciate it. We want to appreciate it more, and so we're studying it, going into it, philosophizing about it.
Right.
So I think it can't be helped to some degree. It's human nature to want to philosophize about it. I think you can do bad philosophizing, and I think you can do good philosophizing. Yeah. And I think Tolkien doesn't want us to think about it too hard. I think that's probably what he's trying to say. Don't overthink this. But what did you think about the rest of what he said there?
Starting where?
Well, just any other things jump out at you about what he was saying?
Not really.
No?
Mm-mm.
I don't know. I thought it was really interesting, the whole embodying of pure natural science. Of that Tom is this embodiment of natural science over zoology. Like,
yeah, I didn't understand that.
So he's basically saying science for the purpose of knowing. I think this is actually the good philosophizing, he would say, and the bad philosophizing. Because science is philosophy, right?
Sure.
Science is a subset of philosophy.
Yep.
Science study, so zoology and botany study the natural world in order to, like, understand it, right?
Right.
And not to use it, right? Cattle breeding or agriculture come from those things and their attempts to turn science into power, right?
I see.
Into a way of
Okay.
controlling or dominating something,
I see.
right?
I see. Okay.
And Tom doesn't seem to be about that, right? He doesn't have a herd of cattle that he refers to, he just seems to live in complete harmony with the forest.
He even said that he didn't try to remove Old Man Willow, right? Or change him,
right?
In any way. He just tried to keep him in line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. So anyway,
Yeah.
I guess overall it seems to be about harmony and about just appreciating things for what they are. I don't think Tolkien is trying to tell us don't philosophize at all, but I think he's saying there's a good philosophy and a bad philosophy to do with this.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah.
Tom is the good scientist. So.
Well, there we go. We've answered our question.
That's it. He's the good scientist.
We figured it out.
All right. Well, one other thing about Tom. What did you think of the whole thing with the ring with him?
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting. I expected that to go very differently.
Yeah.
Just because we already know the effect the ring had on Gollum, right? We know the effect that it had on Bilbo. We've already heard, even though Frodo's only had it for a short amount of time, it's already starting to weigh on him.
Mm-hmm.
I was very surprised. Well, first of all, I was surprised that when Tom asked for the ring, that Frodo actually gave it to him.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think he was going to do that. I thought he would, that whole want of ownership and possession and power, I didn't think Frodo would be able to hand it over.
Right, yeah.
But he does. And I was just shocked that it had absolutely no it had absolutely no effect on him. He was just playing with it. You know, like it was just some other, trinket.
Yeah. It's almost like Frodo had this intuition that Tom was not a threat.
He must have. I don't think he would have handed it over otherwise.
Yeah, it says Tom says, "Show me the precious ring," he said suddenly. And it's funny that he calls it precious.
Yeah, it's true.
He said suddenly in the midst of the story.
But do we know, how did he know about the ring?
We think you learned about it through
from Gildor? That's right, yeah.
And, well, I don't think Frodo didn't actually tell Gildor that he had the ring, right? I think he just told him that he had. Like, Gildor was able to kind of piece things together.
Yeah.
And I think Tom probably was able to piece more together from that. But
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and so he says, Frodo, to his own astonishment, drew out the chain from his pocket and, unfastening the ring, handed it at once to Tom. And they have this little funny thing where he puts it to his eye.
Yeah.
For a second, the hobbits had a vision, both comical and alarming, of his bright blue eye gleaming through a circle of gold. Again, Tom just he just almost feels like a cartoon character.
He does. Yeah, he absolutely does.
Like super real or something like that. Like almost too colorful for the real world,
Yes. That's a good way to put it.
Then Tom put the ring around the end of his little finger and held it up to the candlelight. For a moment, the hobbits noticed nothing strange about this. Then they gasped. There was no sign of Tom disappearing.
Yeah, why is that? Because it just had, is that, so the fact that you typically, that a person usually disappears when they have the ring on, is that a sign of the ring's mastery over you? I mean, because...
I don't know. That's a good question.
Because why didn't Tom disappear? Maybe he's not really human.
Well, I don't think he's human.
Oh.
No, I don't think. No, he's not a man. Men weren't around back then, right?
What?
When?
Well, not. I didn't mean human. I meant like real.
Oh, you
Maybe
mean
he's not flesh and bone. I know we talked about the whole thing that he's not literally a spirit.
Yeah.
Most likely, but he obviously is not made of the same substance as the hobbits.
Well, when I said that super real thing, that kind of popped into my head, but it almost makes me think that he's super, like what I mean by super real is above reality, right? Like, or like almost into the next phase of reality, right? That he's almost like he's almost like a glorified person here on Earth, right? Yeah,
he's like who we will be in heaven, hopefully.
Well, but like
here on Earth,
yeah, almost like you know. Maybe if Tolkien was here, we could put it in these terms: like he's almost like a human being with a resurrected body in the new heavens and the new earth, right? That he's a perfect he's a perfect hybrid or melding of both the spiritual and the bodily, right? And the incarnate, yeah. In a way, that's almost what I was getting at by the superhero. I'm not sure if that holds water, but it seems to, and
it makes sense given what we've learned about him.
That it has. I mean, the ring has every other being, even Gandalf, right?
Yeah, it
has a power over, right?
Yeah.
Or it threatens to have a power over, but with Tom, it's like it's a trifle to him. It's nothing. It's a joke.
Right, and he doesn't disappear when he puts it on. And then when Frodo puts it on to make sure that Tom actually gave him the right ring back, right? Tom can still see him. Yeah. Nobody else can see him when he disappears, but Tom can. Mm-hmm. I mean, he obviously has like X-ray vision or something. Yeah. Right? He must.
Yeah. Well, there's different times when in the Lord of the Rings where people talk about like passing tests, and later on we'll see something like that with Galadriel and the ring. And I get the sense that Tom at some point in the past must have like passed a test, and so because he passed a test, he's entered into this other way of being, and where he just is free of worry, free of the temptation to want to dominate things and to hold power over them. And because of that, like the ring, it's like what use would the ring have for him? So it's like...
So the ring knows it can never master him, so why is he even going to try?
Yeah, well, it's almost like the ring doesn't even recognize him, right? Like, it's like, what do I do with this? I have nothing to give this person, Right,
because the ring works on exploiting your weaknesses.
Right, well, it works on... And it works on your weaknesses, and specifically the weaknesses that are... the corners you want to cut, or what you ultimately want to be, and it tries. It's more about finding the thing that you ultimately want to be. Right. It'll talk about how Gandalf is like, I would use the ring for good, right? But to marshal all of the forces of the good people of Middle Earth against Sauron, but it would inevitably turn back on me in the end, right, and destroy me, right? That's how it works. But Tom doesn't seem to have that problem.
No, that's what we talked about earlier. Yeah. It's like he's already reached his full potential. Like he's already become what he wants to be. So the ring has, it can't do anything to him. Yeah. Pretty, it's hard to describe. It is. Yeah. It's hard to put into words. I mean, I got a sense of it, but it's metaphysical.
Yeah. It's totally meta, man. But I don't know, Tom. I just think Tom Bombadil is a fascinating character. I think he's one of a kind in literature.
Yeah, absolutely.
From the literature I know, at least.
And he's not in the movies, right? So I'm trying to remember how they portrayed him in the movies, and I'm
not at all. He was just totally cut out of the movies, and I can understand why they did it. I think it would have been really hard to do it in the movies, but
do it well.
Part of me would love to see someday like another stab taken at the movies. Where he was included, just to see how they do it.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Maybe in more of a, like a Pixar version of it or something like that.
Yeah.
An animated version of.
I was gonna say it almost seems like he would have to be animated.
Yeah.
Because he's like you said, he's just not real. I mean, he's not as what we think of as real.
Yeah, I wonder if Peter Jackson was not only was he like this doesn't really flow in the story, but he was just like, I don't even know how I'd do this. Like, how
It would
I'd
have
pull
to
this
be
off.
like an Alice in Wonderland kind of thing, right? Like where it just.
I think it'd be like almost too creepy to see, like on screen.
Yeah.
You know?
I think you're probably right about
Like
that.
I think it would be like you're like watching this movie with all these real looking people, and then like this cartoon, like living cartoon character busts in, and you're like, "Whoa, this is
Where did that
uncanny." You know,
come
it's
from?
like that uncanny thing we talked about in one of the early episodes, right? Where when Orome first sees the elves, and it's like he was just like he didn't know exactly what they were going to look like, and then he finally saw them, and he was like, "Whoa, like this is." You know, we've all had those moments where you stumble into something, you're like, "Is this real?"
Yeah.
You know.
Yep.
It's like all spooky, you know.
Yeah. Or the deja vu or whatever.
Yeah. Anyway.
I love that he calls himself Tom Bombadil.
Yeah. Hey, well, that's the other nifty little thing about him is you think if he is this super real, you know, fully realized being that he'd be like super serious and everything like that. He's like a little kid.
Exactly.
He's so innocent, you know.
Yep.
Maybe innocent's the wrong word. Maybe he's kind of come back to innocence the long way around, you know. Mm-hmm. But he's like maturely innocent or something like that. Innocent and totally mature at the same time. I don't know.
That's weird.
Yeah.
But I can see that would. It's a good way to describe
You feel me?
I totally get it. Yeah, no, absolutely. I totally get it.
All right. Well, what other items do we want to cover here? We talked a lot about Tom Bombadil, and at the end, I don't know who Tom Bombadil is, and I think it's best just to leave it that way. But I think you can. My take on it is you can find out lots about him and why Tolkien included him.
Absolutely. Yeah, he almost has kind of like a grandfatherly characteristic to him too. Mm-hmm. You know, he talks about how the hobbits gathered around him and he told them tales and you know, and they don't know how many meals they miss and how long they've been. Like, you know, he seems to have like this just enchanting way about him. Mm-hmm. You know, just draws you in a good way. But yeah, he's definitely otherworldly, for sure.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, anything else in this chapter you wanted to discuss?
I don't think so. Yeah. I mean, we've already figured out that we don't really know who Goldberry is or what her thing is, but I found her very perplexing.
Yeah. She is.
I almost see like a little fairy, like almost like, you know, I mean, like if like Tom Bombadil's Peter Pan and she's Tinkerbell, you know, like
I can see that, yeah.
Something like that.
I can see the idea behind that. Although I don't think Tolkien was a big fan of Peter Pan, so I don't know. He might not have been a fan of that idea. But I can see where you're going with that.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know if they have a spousal relationship. I mean,
you know, it kind of sounded like they did at the beginning. You know, when he's first in the last chapter when Tom invites him to their house, it almost sounds like he's referring to some type of wife who would have had dinner prepared. But I don't think that's it. I don't think they have that.
Or it's like another plane of being, and what that's all about. Then, than what we think of it as.
Yeah, and I was thinking, I feel like this is a, you know, just what the hobbits have been through so far, and how much more they have to go through. This is almost just like a little retreat for them. Mm-hmm. You know, it was an escape, and it was just a time to get refreshed and strengthened, and, you know, okay, there is still good in the world. You know, we have something, you know, to fight for, right? And what we're doing is good because there are people like Tom Bombadil and Goldberry in this world, and we need to do what we can to preserve them. Yeah. So, I think it was kind of maybe a reality check, which is weird because we've already established that Tom and Goldberry are probably not really real, but... You know what I'm trying to say? Like, it almost like helps put things in perspective.
No, I think they're real. You're saying
they're real, but they're like otherworldly. You know what I mean? Like, they're not real in the sense that we think of real. Like, they're not. I gotta be. I gotta be a little stickler there. I think they're real. Yeah. They're just more real. I think more real might even be a better. They're glorified or perfected or whatever. But they're not real in the sense of, like, I mean, they're obviously different than the hobbits, right? They're on a different plane of reality.
Yeah, we can agree on that.
We can agree on that?
Yeah, we'll shake on that.
Okay. Well, anyway, that's all I was trying to say, is I feel like it was this time that, for the hobbits, just, and, you know, even when Frodo seems relieved when he looks out the window the next day and sees that it's raining. He's like, oh, good, we don't have to leave today.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You know that they're very comfortable there, and it was almost like a heaven on earth kind of place for them, and a place for them to charge their batteries and be, to get prepared for the road ahead.
Yeah.
So, anyway.
What did you think of the dreams? Anything to say about the dreams?
I just thought it was interesting that it went into so much detail about about Frodo's dream and Merry's dream and Pippin's dream, and it obviously, I don't know, dreams are just fascinating to me. But it obviously says a little something about really what they're truly scared of.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was, how Frodo has this dream about the this dark tower and the moon and an eagle coming up and taking him away, right? And Pippin has the dream about the Black Riders, and then Merry has a dream about water, about drowning.
Mm-hmm.
And it's obviously these are. I just feel like it gives us some insight, I think, into their characters as far as what is it that they truly fear and what's going to be the biggest challenge for them,
right,
as they continue on the adventure. But what I thought was really interesting was after it goes through all this detail about Frodo's dream and Pippin's and Merry's dream, it says, as far as he could remember, Sam slept through the night in deep content. If logs are contented.
Right. Yeah, I thought that was really funny. The other ones are having like these really weird dreams, and they got to remember like, no, nothing bad. Fear no nightly noises.
Right. Yeah.
And then Sam's like just snoring away. Yeah.
Well, I think that's, again, I just think it gives some insight into their character.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I liked that.
All right. Cool. Well, the scene that Frodo sees is actually something that will come back to in another chapter.
Was it kind of, because we talked about he had some kind of vision at the end of another chapter. Was that related to his dream? Because he had a vision of
I don't know if those two dreams are related.
Oh, okay.
But this is actually related to something that's actually happening.
I see. Gotcha.
So, and then real quick, what did you think about the thing with Farmer Maggot, or the little?
Oh yeah, that was weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where Tom and Farmer Maggot are like buddies, and
yeah, they're like buddies, and Tom holds him in very high esteem, and
I like what he says about him. The words he says. He says, "There's earth under his old feet, and clay on his fingers, wisdom in his bones, and both his eyes are open."
Wisdom on his bones, and both his eyes are open. Yeah, I agree. Now, was it trying to say? I can't remember where that part was, but were they basically saying that Farmer Maggot's been around as long as Tom Bombadil, or not?
No, I don't think so. Now,
Okay.
I think there was I think at one point, if I remember from The Shadow of the Past, which is the fourth book in the History of Middle-earth series, I think at one point Tolkien had considered making Farmer Maggot and Tom Bombadil like of a same species.
Oh, right, okay.
And I think that meant that Farmer Maggot wouldn't have really been a hobbit. He would have been whatever Tom Bombadil is.
Right.
But at some point he decided that he was just going to keep Farmer Maggot a hobbit, but still have some kind of friendship. And I think there was even supposed to be like some big conspiracy, like the good conspiracy that they were conspiring on.
I see,
at one
okay.
point, but
Gotcha.
he just leaves it in there that they're buddies.
I wonder how they met. Because they don't really live near each other.
Well, Farmer Maggot's not too far from the Brandywine, so he's not too far from
I see. Just up the river.
Buckland and in the Old Forest, and who knows where Tom Bombadil gets to.
Yeah, because it doesn't say in this chapter about how he was like, he's been out jumping around the hilltops since the gray of dawn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
His feet are wet with dew.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a quirky little character for sure.
Most deaf.
Alright.
All right,
Good
so
stuff, John.
good stuff, Greta.
Thanks, dear.
Yeah. Next time, Chapter 8, Fog on the Barrow Downs. Another almost complete chapter that was left out of the film. So come on back and join us.
Yes,
and we shall have a good discussion on that.
Mm-hmm.
And go check out truemyths.org. And thanks for listening.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in.
Yeah. Keep those haikus coming.
Yes.
Trevor would love to hear another short form ballad from you.
Please, yes.
As you have time. And thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
Take care.
Bye, y'all.
Please remember to check out truemyths.org for show notes, other haiku, and lots of additional Tolkien goodness. Also, if you're enjoying the podcast, would you please leave the Tolkien Road a rating and feedback on iTunes? It's a great way to support the show and only takes a minute or two. On the next episode, we continue our discussion of The Lord of the Rings with Chapter 8 of Fellowship, Fog on the Barrow Downs. Please tune in, and thanks for listening.